welcome back to Chef's Order Sunday. I'm so happy to see you all here. Thanks for joining me. Today we have a very simple video and it's a lot of fun, and you usually probably have most of these ingredients already at home. So we're gonna be making cheese from scratch, and we're gonna be making a delicious breakfast out of that cheese. It's a lot of fun for all ages. All you're gonna need is a little bit of acid. I have that in the form of lemon juice, or white vinegar works just as well. We're gonna need milk, and then I'm just gonna be putting it on a nice crusty French baguette with some honey. Let's get started. Okay, so the science of making cheese is that we're gonna need some dairy. We have our milk. Whole milk is what you need. You need a lot of fat in there to get it going. And also we need acid. The acid from a lemon juice or from white vinegar is gonna curdle the milk. And what that's gonna do is when you add the vinegar or the lemon juice, it's gonna form curds. And that's gonna separate the curds of the milk from the whey, which is gonna be the leftover liquid left behind. We have to get our lemon juice. In order for the proper chemical reaction to take place, our milk needs to be at the proper temperature. So you wanna heat this up on a medium heat. You wanna make sure you constantly stir the milk so that it doesn't scorch on the bottom. And the temperature that you're looking for is gonna be between 180 and 190 degrees. A thermometer will help you extremely. I recommend you use a thermometer so you can know right where your temperature is at. But for me, I know liquid boils at 212 degrees, so I want just under a boil. I'm looking for about 15 degrees under a boil. So I'm gonna look for slight little bubbles and lots of steam coming off, and then I know that I'm ready. Here's my freshly squeezed lemon juice. My personal preference, I like to mix lemon juice and white vinegar 50-50. I've made fresh cheese many times in my life. If you look up the recipes on Google, it will call for either one or the other most of the time. It'll call for white vinegar or it'll call for lemon juice. And what I found is I like to use a mixture of both. Because if you use just vinegar, the flavor is very basic. It's kind of plain. And if you use just lemon juice, I find it can be too citrusy for a cheese. So when you mix both, you have the slight little bit of citrus and you have the slight little plain acidity from the vinegar, and that's what I like best. This is a half gallon of milk, and for every gallon of milk, you're gonna use half a cup of acid. Just doing a little bit of basic math, a half gallon is gonna require a quarter cup of acid, which I have here ready, and we're just gonna stir, stir, stir constantly until we're at the right temperature. This is a fun experiment that you can do at home because this is exactly where food and cooking meets science. If you don't get the procedure correct, then the chemical reaction will not take place that it needs to. Like I said, most of us have these ingredients at home. It's quick and easy to make, and it's delicious. So this is a fun experiment, a fun activity for children. It's a good learning experience as well. I see steam forming on the top of the milk, and I see little bubbles coming up. So that's how I know that we're ready to go. We're at the right temperature right now. Turn your heat off, take your acid, your vinegar, or your lemon juice, or both, and pour it in. And the chemical reaction takes place instantly. That the curds are separated from the whey. You can see the separation happening. This is the whey, the milky, cloudy liquid, and these are gonna be your curds. That right there is essentially the quickest form of cheese you can have. Now we still have to refine this and process it a little bit, but that looks perfect. That's exactly what you want right there. Let this sit in the pot and just sit there undisturbed for 10 minutes. And then we're gonna strain it through some cheesecloth. Cheesecloth is a very, very fine material used for food, and this is gonna go ahead and separate all of the curd from the whey. Now, if you don't have cheesecloth at home, almost every supermarket, Target, Walmart, everywhere sells this. You can order it online. It's not very expensive, but also a clean kitchen cloth or some good paper towels will do the same trick. All right, it's been 10 minutes. You can see that everything has had a proper time to sit and separate. You take your cheesecloth, your towel, your paper towel, whatever you got, put it over top of a bowl that's ready to catch it all, and strain it. This cheese has a lot of potential names. You can call it farmer's cheese, queso fresco, but really, I just like to call it fresh cheese. But fresh cheese is queso fresco. The point here is to extract most of the liquid from it. So I'm going to stir the cheese, agitate it, and let some of the moisture sink down into the bottom. After the whey is all strained through the cheesecloth, what you have left behind here, this is your fresh cheese. Go ahead and season lightly with just a little bit of salt. Mix that all around, and this is exactly what you're looking for. A nice, soft curd. Now, you can take this curd right here, and you can make things that you're very familiar with out of it. Like we could get cream cheese or ricotta by not doing too much more to it as it is. Take your towel or your cloth, whatever you have your cheese in. Bundle it up real good. I'm gonna tie a little knot on the end here and make a package. Squeeze out a little bit of the excess moisture that we don't need. We want a little bit of moisture, but not too much. Take a bowl or a mold that will fit the amount of cheese you have. Throw plastic wrap in there and push it all the way down. And now put your cheese inside of it. Close it up. Wrap that plastic back on top. And then find anything you can to weigh it down. We want to make sure the cheese is nice and pressed with a good amount of weight on it. So I see that that fits good all the way around. Now I'm just going to add some water. So the weight of the water is going to make sure the cheese is nice and pressed, uniform in shape and size. And now refrigerate this for at least an hour, just so it can cool down and let the form of the shape take place. So the cheese we just put in the fridge is the curd, and this is the whey, the byproduct left behind from the cheese making process. Now there are still some uses for the whey. You can substitute it in a baking recipe that calls for water or milk. You can use it to ferment vegetables such as sauerkraut. You can use it to cook pastas, potatoes, or rice. But for me, I don't plan to do any of those things. It's totally okay to just dispose this, put it in your garden, have some sort of fertilization, you know, but it's not super necessary to save this. All right, our cheese has been pressed in the fridge for about an hour. Now it's time to go check out what's underneath. Remove your weight from the top, remove your cheese from its mold, and now let's see what we got here. All right, that looks pretty good to me. Our cheese looks pretty good. The texture is nice and firm and soft at the same time. You see I get a nice even cut right there. And it holds its shape too for the most part, that I can pick up the large piece of it. There's a couple crumbles coming off. That's totally fine. But the inside looks nice, the outside looks nice, and it slices very, very well. I'm just gonna go ahead and check for the seasoning. You can definitely tell that I've used lemon juice. It's very good, it's very fragrant, nice and citrusy, but that's why I like to cut it in half with the white vinegar so it's not too overpowering. The cheese is a little under-seasoned, but that's okay. That's kind of right where you want it, because in the application we're about to use it, you're just gonna sprinkle some salt right on the top before serving. And now I'll show you guys how to make the most of this delicious fresh cheese that we just made. Here I have a nice French baguette. We're gonna slice it on a bias so we have good surface area. We're gonna make some crostinis. These are a good appetizer, a good breakfast. You can eat this any time of the day. Cutting it on the bias is good, which just means diagonally, because you increase the surface area, which means you have a larger area that once you toast it, you can get it nice and crispy, and then we have more space to spread our cheese out. Melt some butter in a saute pan on a medium heat, and now all we're gonna do is toast our bread. Lay it right down in that pan, let it absorb all that good butter. You could easily do this in an oven or a toaster oven too. And now just let that sit and get toasted and crispy for maybe about 2 minutes until it's golden brown. You don't want to let it get too dark. We all know how burnt bread tastes. Once you can smell your bread is toasting and get into that good, crispy, crunchy exterior, it's time for a flip. That looks very, very good to me. And now you just toast the other side too. Here we have our finished product, the nice, beautifully golden grilled, buttery baguette crostinis. It's perfectly golden brown, nice and crispy, buttery, but it's still soft and pillowy on the inside, like a nice baguette should be. So we have our finished cheese here, which came out excellent. Now the amount of work that I put into this was only maybe 15 minutes. Now there is some downtime that you have to let it rest in the fridge, but that doesn't require any work. You just put it and forget about it. So once the cheese is finished, we have our beautifully toasted bread. Now it's time to assemble some really nice, good chunks of our fresh cheese. Throw it down almost like it's a spread. Cover your baguette almost entirely. We have our perfect baguettes covered with our perfect cheese, and now it's time to garnish. Some red pepper flakes, just for a little bit of heat. That's gonna make the flavor of the cheese pop. I have some nice honey from Colombia here. Just drizzle it right over. The sweetness complements the cheese very well. The heat from the pepper flakes, the creaminess of the cheese, everything ties together perfectly in this one little bite that is so simple, yet so delicious. And last but not least, I have my flaky sea salt that is smoked. This is just gonna give it a nice little crunch on top, not too much. It's gonna provide a good smokiness, a good seasoning. You can see in there the granule size of this salt is very large. That's why it's a finishing salt. You don't season with this at the beginning, you just season with it at the end. And there we have it, our perfectly toasted baguette, our homemade cheese, our nice fresh honey drizzled on top, with just a little bit of pepper flakes to bring in the heat, a little bit of smoked sea salt for a crunch, and this is it. This is such a delicious breakfast that you can throw together in no time. Oh my gosh, that's just so unbelievable. And it's insane to think about how little work I put into it. Very minimal efforts, very minimal money, things you probably already have laying around your house, turns into such a fantastic meal. And there's just something so satisfying about eating food that you cooked from scratch. I feel a good sense of accomplishment that I made the cheese. I'm very happy with it. So go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. Thank you guys for coming back week after week to support me. Chef Sawyer. And I'll see you all next week. Mwah! Cut.